Well, welcome back to Common Farm Flowers. Today we're going to talk about autumn seed sowing. Now, I've got a live at 5 on Thursday for my club members, so watch out for that, clubbers. But I thought it'd be worth talking about it for everybody as well, because we don't want to be exclusive. The club just has extra bits. Doesn't it, clubbers? You know what you get. Anyway, my friend Higgledy Garden, Benjamin, has sent me a lovely selection of hardy annual seeds to sow in the autumn. And this year they were picked by another friend of mine, Gemma, Colour Wheel Garden. Hi, Gemma. And it's a lovely combination. So I thought we'd have a look at those, decide what we're sowing when and how and why. And I'll be thinking about other seeds that I might sow and all sorts of things that go with seed sowing in the autumn. I know it's only halfway through August, but in case you haven't worked it out now, all I do is plan ahead. And if I plan ahead, my mojo doesn't disappear too far down the field. And if you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. Press the bell icon and we'll tell you when we've got more clips coming up. And if any of the tips and tricks I give you along the way are useful, you can always buy me a coffee, or better still, join my club. And the links to coffee buying and club membership are in the blurb to all my clips. Right, on we go. So dear old Ben sent me Higgledy Garden. Very, very highly recommend him. For lots of reasons. When we buy from small businesses, why do we buy? One, they tend to be very good at what they do because they're micro experts in their field. So this small business is very, very good at what they do. Ben buys his seed new every year, so it's fresh as a daisy, and once it's sold out, it's gone, done. So it's never been lying around. Sometimes if you go to a garden centre, the seed will have been sitting in that hot, airless environment for a year or more, and it will be the responsibility of the seed company will have a rep who goes around checking on the seed and replacing it from time to time. And they may not get there very often. So I would not, if I were you, buy seed from a garden centre. I would buy seed direct from the seed supplier, ordering online, or from small seed people. Like if you go to a specialist plant nursery and they're collecting their own seed, I would definitely buy seed from them because they really will know what they are talking about and the seed will be super fresh. So what has Higgledy got in his autumn sowing bundle? He has got Calendula Ice Maiden, pale colour calendula, put these to one side. Godesha Crown, I'm putting it in the same pile as the calendula because I'll tell you why in a minute. Cerinthe, lovely purple, Cerinthe Major Purpurescence, again going in the same pile. Calendula Indian Prince, hot dark orange, gorgeous calendula. Calendula is pot marigold, edible flower. Be careful, obviously, if you're growing it with poisonous plants, but I put calendula petals in all my salads at this time of year. Eschscholzia Orange King, very, very true orange, great colour, again going on this pile. Cornflower Black Ball, great cornflower, tall, dramatic ball, literally a ball of very, very dark purple petals. I'm going to make another pile for this one. So these are all going together over here, and there are 4 of this pile. Cornflower Black Ball, this high, if you sow it in the autumn. Amazing dark purple colour. So we'll keep that to one side, put these out of the way. Scabiosa Ping Pong. You grow it for the seed heads. Dramatic, instant seed heads, about ping pong size. That goes on the same pile. Gypsophila, this is a variety called Covent Garden, much softer than your traditional florist's gyp. It is a many-stemmed, very, very small bell shape, very pretty, white, extremely useful if you do a lot of wedding flowers. Is that me? I think it is. Put that in the middle. what I'd call a filler. Chrysanthemum Rainbow, gorgeous. It's a Japanese annual chrysanthemum. You can grow it to eat the leaves. In Japan, it's a salad plant. But the flowers are white petals and then stripes inside. It's possible there are other colours, I'll have to look it up, but in my head, it's a sort of white daisy shape with other colour stripes going around. It looks a bit like a kind of 1970s American sports sock, in a good way. There we are. Painted sage, salvia, clary sage, and this is a nice mix, and so it's going to go on that pile. Borage. The bees absolutely love it. The flowers are edible. You can float them in your cocktails. And it's quite an unusual cut flower. So if you're going for a bee happy cut flower patch, borage is a good idea. Again, going on this pile. And so is Nigella Persian Jewels. Gorgeous mix of blues and purples and pinks and whites. Really nice colours. Nigella is love in a mist. I really grow it for the seed heads. I don't tend to cut the flowers much, but it's very pretty and the bees love it. Phacelia, another one the bees absolutely love. Blue flowers, kind of neon, and the bees, you'll have the bees humming over it, but also makes a really, really good cut flower. And it's again going on this pile. And now we've got a new pile, Larkspur Imperials, blue, white, purple, pink, tall. So this pile, I'm 5'2", will be as tall as this, kind of from my waist up to my shoulder, potentially depending on your soil. But Larkspur, taller. For me, it's as tall as me, especially when it's sown in the autumn. So we'll put it here. This pile, by the way, the original pile, they're shorter. So again, if you're designing a cut flower patch, you might be thinking about having a swathe of colour going up from front to back. The first four I chose are shorter. So Eschscholzia, this tall. Calendula Ice Maiden, this tall. Godetia Crown, this tall, pink. Cerinthe Major Purpurescens, this tall. Another calendula, this tall. So that's the front of the border. Here's the middle, Phacelia, Nigella Persian Jewels, borage, painted sage, chrysanthemum rainbow, gypsophila, scadiosa ping pong, and cornflower black paul. And then taller, this is the tall end, Larkspur Imperials, tall, purple, pink, white, poisonous. So don't get it mixed up with the calendula or the borage or the cornflower, which is also edible and very good in a salad or floating in a cocktail. Ami Majors, if you sow it in the autumn, you're going to get, I'm 5'2", remember, so you can get it 6 foot plus. So tall, back of the border, white, fluff. It's a lovely umbellifer. Sown in the autumn, you'll get the biggest heads that you'll see. Corn cockle, tall. It could go in the middle, but I'm going to put it in it could go in this pile, but I'm putting it in the tall pile. Very pretty little bell-shaped flower. I'm assuming it's pink. Mammoth dill, tall. Again, in the autumn, it'll be very, very tall. By the spring, love with the smell. I mean, just gorgeous. And it's a bright, bright, zingy yellow for florist, great in floristry. Obviously also chopped up over your salmon for supper, very good. And then a bonus packet of Bees Please, which is a mix of all sorts of bee-friendly cut flower seeds, which probably I will probably not sow in the autumn, although you can. I'm likely to hold these back until I see what kind of space I've got left in the spring, and I'll sow them in the spring. But if you know what space you've got, that will make a lovely bee-friendly patch in the spring. So you could sow it in the autumn. There we are. That's the Higgledy Garden mix. I also have 1 or 2 seed packets left over from this year, which I need to go through. And I've ordered a few bits from Chiltern Seeds, which are going to get sown later. But before I do anything else, I've got to go and look at the space I've got. So count the seed packets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 packets of seed. Remember that. Right, let's go and look at the polytunnel. I'm keeping them in sections. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip them round. And then I'm going to put them in my pocket. Let's go and look at the polytunnel. Right, so we'll go through here towards, this is where I keep my seedlings going along. So this is my little propagating area, and it's really important when you're thinking about what you're going to sow to think about how much space you've got. I've got room here comfortably for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I can put here about 20 seed trays, and I always sow into A4 size seed trays. So I can fit about 20 here. You can see I've already got some plants here, so I can't overdo the space. So whatever you decide to do when you're thinking about sowing at any time of year, do think about how much room you've got to put everything. For the moment, I've got everything outside because it's mid-August. But obviously, going forward, small greenhouse. It's very weird. I'm pointing not at the greenhouse, but I can see that it looks as though I'm pointing at the greenhouse to you. Weird, but true. So I've got this small greenhouse and another small greenhouse. God, I can't get my finger to put there. Another little tiny greenhouse. These possibly are going to get moved up to the project when the time comes. But, so again, think about how much space you've got. And then where are you going to plant everything? Well, here's my polytunnel, and it's recently been cleared of my early spring and early summer crop. I still have some helichrysum in here and butterflies munching on them. I have planted out some of my biennials in here, but not all of them. Some of them are planted outside, but this way I get to stagger my crop. And this is how I very, very sophisticatedly measure my space. You ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 meters. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29 meters, 29 running meters of meter wide beds. It's a very sophisticated way of doing it, I know, but it works for me because I'm a keen ballparker. So if I've got 29 running meters of meter wide beds, for annuals, I will get about 30 plants per square meter, planting at about a 20 centimetre spacing, which is about just wider than my hand span. So I can ballpark. If I'm going to have a metre square per variety, that means I've got 29 room for 29 varieties. I'm not going to have that many, obviously, because I've got to remember in here will be my ranunculus. Very big deal for me. But I plant the ranunculus at about the same spacing. So I can choose now how much space I'm going to give to the ranunculus and how much space I'm going to give to hardy annuals, which I'm overwintering. Do you see? You with me? So remember those 17 seed packets. I can then, if I sow 1 metre each of those varieties, I need 17 running meters, and I counted 29. So I could say, actually, I'm going to have 10 meters of ranunculus and then give myself 19 meters for hardy annuals. And it could get better than that. The sun in the winter rises in the east and sets in the west. This side of the tunnel is the warmest. So I'm going to put the tall people along this side, the short people at the other end, the middle-sized people down the middle, and keep room for the ranunculus with the middle-sized people. And actually what I'm going to do with the ranunculus is I'm going to put them at the far end, which is the south end, where they will get the most warmth during the day. And they won't be crowded out, their light won't be taken away by other things being taller than them. And that is how I think. So if I didn't have a tunnel, and let's face it, most people are not growing commercial quantities of flowers in polytunnels. They've got a garden and they'd like to just have a few early flowers. So what I would do is I would take an A4 size tray. I would very sparsely sow it with a maximum of 30 seeds, and I would count them in. 30 seeds will take 1 metre of a metre wide bed, so a metre square of space if you plant them all out together. I'd sow them, I'd water them from underneath, so I put them in a tray so they grow from underneath. When they're a bit bigger, this size for example, these are echinopsis for next year. When they're this size, I'd pot them on. I have sown them so sparsely that they have grown in quite a nice shape. They're not fighting with each other. It's really important not to oversow trays. You end up with too much stuff. So I will pot them on now, when they're this big, so that they have a pot each. And they can grow quietly through the winter in their own pot. This is a hollyhock, but imagine it's an Ammi majus. I can then keep that cool, frost-free, or even quite frosty. They're hardy until the end of the winter, end of March, beginning of April, and I can plant them out. Don't sow too many because you'll end up with too many. And you don't have to sow everything. So all these packets of seeds I've got, I'm not going to sow all the seeds. I'll sow some of the seeds of all of the packets. Okay? I don't need them all. What do you need? What do you really want? Don't oversow. And then be prepared to wait to plant them out. Or plant them out and cover them in fleece, or little tunnels, or whatever it is. Don't keep them going all winter and then find that they're being killed by the frost because you were too keen. I'm always doing this. I'm always losing things, so I can't be bothered to keep them any longer, and I chuck them out and then they get frosted or eaten, or they're just not big enough to deal with it. And the other thing to do is to not autumn sow too early. We are hardiness zone 8. I'm not a big fan of the hardiness zones because I think they're misleading. I think people think that it guarantees things. Of course, there's nothing guaranteed with the weather. However, it gives you a ballpark idea of where we are. I won't be sowing any hardy annual seeds until at least mid-September, because I don't want to risk them trying to flower this year. However, if I were going to direct sow some outside, for example, I've got this lovely stretch, an empty stretch, going down here next to my phlox. And I could sow that beginning of September with a mix of hardy annuals. Remember that bees mix that I had at the beginning from Higgledy Garden? That might go along here very nicely. And then it'll germinate and it'll just spend the winter outside. Be careful. There are no guarantees. We are wet, so we may be zone 8, which is fairly balmy, but we are thick clay and we tend to be very wet. In the winter, this is a marsh. I walk along here and it squelches underfoot. So I struggle to keep hardy annuals outside over winter. Partly because they're so wet that then there's a frost and they all get killed off by the frost. If you're on free draining soil, that's a whole nother thing, but I'm not. So you've got to work with what you've got. Also, I'm not saying anything along here because I happen to know that underneath are my wild bluebells and Ornithogalum nanus, unless I'm very much mistaken. Anyway, but if you had a space, you could. Sorry about the builders. Whatever you choose to sow in the autumn for the spring, make sure they're hardy varieties. Half hardies and tender. These are all half hardies and tenders, and they're flowering at the end of the summer. Don't sow cosmos or sunflowers or nicotiana or cobia scandens. You'll be disappointed. Choose really hardy varieties. Make sure you've understood about how much space they're going to take up, because then otherwise you'll sow too many. It's hard enough keeping 30 seedlings going over the winter. Don't do too much. Look at the space and work out how much space you've got. And also look at the height. You can see here, so I'm 5'2", and the cosmos is taller than me. This was sown on the 4th of May. It's lovely. And I'm a flower farmer, so I don't mind how tall it is. But are you a gardener? Are you making a pretty garden? If you're making a pretty garden, you might be looking at different heights. So consider the height. So go back to the beginning of this clip and just look at what I said about height. So you could sow front to back of the border. Imagine in your head how much space that's going to take. How wide is your border? Can you get to the back of it? Are you going to be dotting them in between other plants in a herbaceous situation? Where are your plants going to be? I see people sowing in the autumn sort of in a frenzy. And I think I know they're not going to use them all. So really be honest with yourself about the space that you need. The one other thing that isn't in that pile that Higgledy Garden sent, which I might, if I were you, I might think about ordering some, are sweet peas. They do very, very well over winter, and then you get nice early plants. So maybe add some sweet peas to the mix. And you don't have to overwinter seedlings. That lovely bundle of seeds that I've got from Higgledy will sow just as well in March and give you a wonderful crop from June next year. So you don't have to go through hell and high water to have early flowering annuals. The reason people do it is A, they can't resist propagating, but B, what they're looking for are height. If you have plants growing through the winter, they will develop an incredible root ball. They won't be especially big necessarily in the early spring, but you'll have really good root systems. so that when you plant them out, or if you have them in the tunnel over winter, or you've kept them in the ground but you've covered them a little bit and protected them, you'll get height and huge flower heads. So the Ami majus that is sown in September, so long as it survives the winter, you'll get flower heads this big, dinner plate size. You can ask yourself again, do you need dinner plate sized Ami majus that's 10 foot tall? It's fun. Do you need it? If you're a flower farmer, I'd say you probably do need it, because the Ami majus will start to flower as the cow parsley goes over, and then you've got your cow parsley, Ami majus succession of lace, which if you're a flower farmer or florist, all those lace caps are really, really useful. Umbellifers are really useful. So yeah. But if you're a normal gardener, if I weren't flower farming, I would not do any annuals over the winter, except maybe sweet peas. Anyway, thanks very much for joining. I hope you enjoy my lovely tender annuals. None of these were sown until the 4th of May, but they are the best I've got to offer you as an example. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. I can never turn this thing off.